Computer.
Hello.
There. How are you all doing?
Good.
Nikki, do you live in Robbinsdale?
I'm in Golden Valley, so I live within the Robbinsdale School District, yes.
So is that a requirement of your school district? I know in some school districts they have a thing, but.
No, it's not, but it was actually, it was wonderful and really bittersweet at the same time because I was working part-time in Minnetonka Public Schools for ECFE.
Oh, okay.
And I was working for Robbinsdale part-time years ago. And I had told my coordinator in Robbinsdale that when the baby went to kindergarten, I would work full-time. The baby is going to be going into 7th grade in the fall. But I told her, you know, when the baby goes to kindergarten, in the fall or whatnot, I'll work for Robbinsdale full time. And so that spring she called me in and she said, well, so are we doing this? And I've been full time for Robbinsdale ever since, but I will say that the staff, just very, very, very talented and very wonderful in Minnetonka. And actually, that kind of, I had my daughter in kindergarten in Minnetonka. She's older. She's almost, well, she's 3 grades older, almost 3 years older. So we were driving her out there, and the only reason we open enrolled her was because we wanted her in Spanish immersion. And one of the principals said, I'll take her, when she did not get into Robbinsdale Spanish immersion.
Okay.
But by 1st grade, we had already moved her to Robbinsdale. And so I was doing the drive. And it was just a really good fit because while she was in Minnetonka and I was in both districts, on like spring break, they did not match. So I'm working and now my breaks match the kids, and it's a wonderful, wonderful district. I will say they're very, very different.
Yeah.
Really interesting too, to note some of the issues and the things that the families were dealing with in the 2 different districts, and the conversations and the parenting discussions were very different. And I cherish that opportunity to have been having those discussions that seemed like they would have been similar in 2 different settings, and they were not.
So how are they different?
I don't want to stereotype because it's so broad and it's so sweeping, but some of the things that we were talking about, which I will always hang on to, was, and I did not catch on to this for a couple of years because I had 5 years of full staff in Minnetonka, but it took me a couple years to figure out. Parents would individually come to me and share, how isolated perhaps they were feeling. And these were families that were on the parent advisory council. They were engaged. They were, 3 kids, 4 kids, really. The parents are super involved and telling me how lonely they were. And I think over the course of time, what I realized when this happened more and more was that a lot of their families had, they had like maybe parenting partners who were traveling, and they really were single parenting. They really were in a situation that you didn't necessarily see what was on the surface.
Yep.
And we started having more conversations about that. They were looking forward to and the other thing was, we would talk about, oh, what are you doing over spring break? What are you doing on winter break? And a lot of times in Robbinsdale, they were talking about family gatherings, and some were taking vacations, and some were, just lots and lots of things that were closer to home. Minnetonka, it was more common that families they had these big elaborate things planned. They had the ski trip to Aspen, and they had all of these things that were going on. But that was when I started to realize that oftentimes those were the only times that they really were a family, and it was over vacation, because all of the other times the parenting partner was traveling. And so what I started to recognize in the parent-child relationship, the dynamic, the routine, even talking about routines. Oh, when my parenting partner comes home, my routine is off, or all of these things. It was almost like a deployment. They had so many similarities as to what we read with our military families. And now that's sweeping and it's general. We have every single kind of family that there is in Minnetonka. But there just became over time, I recognized many trends that we could have a conversation about routine. We could have a conversation about co-parenting. We could have all of these things. It just took on a very, very, very different nuance in the communities. And so topics that I thought perhaps were similar, they were not. And that was eye-opening, and that was good for me.
Mm-hmm. You know, there was an educator in St. Paul that I talked to, oh gosh, this must have been maybe 8 years ago. Anyway, she had worked for years in, I mean, I think she went to St. Paul in like the last 5 years of her career. But she had worked for years in a relatively, I think more in downtown St. Paul or something. Anyway, and then she moved out to Highland Park. And so, you know, very different demographics of families. And she said, she goes, when I moved here, I thought this was going to be easy cake, you know, like these are going to be families with, and she said, I was so stunned to see the layers of depth of stress and strain and need in these families that it's not always economics, right? And we have a tendency about sort of, and this has been part of my own advocacy too about ECFE, is there's always this tantrum where funding goes and it's just like it's going to high need, you know, high risk families, high need families. And, you know, that risk and that need doesn't follow economics, you know, and race. And, you know, all families need assistance. And it's not to diminish the need that money and access and power and structural equality and all of that we fight for has value to, but it's also though to recognize that families are families and they have challenges and there's a role for support across the board too. So, thank you. Hi, Ellen. Hi, Jenny. Hi, Monica. Welcome, Anjali. Great to see everyone this morning. I've already been to Spain this morning and presented at a conference. So that's how my day is going. A conference that I had a paper on in Valencia, Spain, continued to be held not in person, but virtually. So, but the biggest challenge there, and I'm very sympathetic with some of our parent ed students who have traveled or have come to us from places like Singapore, was the time difference. So while everybody else was meeting in the afternoon at 2:45, I was up at 7:45 presenting at my computer. So I've already been to Spain. What have you all been doing today?
I'll share that I was working on some marketing ideas to put forward to our director, and hopefully she'll put forward to our district, because I think, you know, as ECFE, we always talk about this need, and in this group, we've talked about the need for us here to get together across the state. And when we talk about the need that we have a part-time person or a person working very part-time hours that can, for ECFE within the MDE, I just think that we as a state need to be dialoguing and figuring this out. And so the document that we're going to have a conversation with our director tomorrow morning, and I was kind of putting some ideas into that document, but I would love to hear more dialogue with this group and over the course of this, you know, the next meetings that we have and next year and moving forward. So
can you, because that's actually one of the things on my very loose agenda, but what I was thinking about talking about today was sort of with this group moving ahead, what do you need from it, and that kind of thing. And some of that is energized from Friday's conversation. And so Nikki, can you phrase that in a way that if we present that back out to the group that they can respond to?
Susan, will you say more? Like ask another question, like phrase it as.
So I'm actually, so if you can rephrase, so because, you know, is if we look, one of my questions about this group is like, what do you want to do over the summer? What kind of shape form do you want to give to this group? I'm going to advocate for meeting once a week, right? And as schools are, because the reason that we were meeting twice a week or having two separate sessions was just based on people's availability with their teaching and that sort of thing. And so one thing I would propose is if we have one meeting a week, then that's just the summertime schedule, and we'll figure out a good time that works for people. That's less important to me than it is to have a sense of kind of purpose and value for the group. And if the group wants to keep things, as more of a salon where we all just get together and talk about, decide that day what you want to talk about, that's perfectly fine. I'm not putting an agenda on the group. On the other hand, if there is some, and I was getting a sense, Nikki, from what you were saying about your meeting with the marketing person, is there a momentum, a direction, a shape, some movement, something that this group can contribute to that would be useful to the whole? I'm more understanding the momentum of the group so that I have an understanding too of any role that I could play to facilitate or whatever. So I'm rephrasing that and asking you to, if you can phrase kind of what your, like if you go to your marketing person, like what is it that you would ask this group to assist with?
So tomorrow, actually, our meeting is with our director, this is not like a marketing director.
Okay.
We don't have in Robbinsdale, actually our coordinator was Monica before now she's in St. Paul. So we never hired anyone really into that position. And so the job went to the person who would have been her supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so it's the director of early childhood programs is who we're meeting with. And
Mm-hmm.
I think if I were to rephrase what I was saying in a way, I would love to have this group across the state be working to figure out a plan for statewide marketing. How do we come together to make this happen? What's the work, the cost, who does it? So it's the workforce. How do we get our districts involved? I have so many more questions than answers. I don't know if that helps.
So statewide marketing of ECFE?
Yes.
Okay.
So I love that idea, but Nikki, I'm gonna play devil's advocate and throw a little wrench in it for you. But I love the idea of a statewide, like, here, let's promote ECFE. But I think the issue is going to come down to money and budget. I'm right now, I've offered to do free things, and the only way that we're going to really be able to provide free things is if I volunteer my time. Because my coordinator is saying we can't lose any revenue. So as you know, I'd love to provide some summer stuff and get paid for it. But I'm not going to get paid for it if I do anything. We are doing a couple little parent drop-in things. So I love the idea of a statewide overhaul, like, hello, here, we're here, but I know that do you see what I'm saying? Like, with all the different budgets, how do we do that? How do we make it work so that everybody has an option to buy into that, but at the same time, we can't all offer the same things?
Well, I think in an ideal situation, I'm not even thinking that it's the individual ECFEs that are buying into it. I think maybe I'm just super dreamy and idealistic, but what if we did have some corporate sponsors? What if we did have our districts at large buying in, so it's not something that's coming out of an ECFE budget? What if it was the MDE? What if it was some of the community programs, if it was universities? I don't know. I don't know what it could look like, but I guess I'm not imagining necessarily that individual ECFE budgets are going to be responsible for this.
Mm-hmm.
maybe we'd have to buy in. I think that was the model of Echo years back, was that there was like a dues per ECFE member or like individual district. I think we've seen it doesn't work. Echo went away.
What is Echo?
I would have to Google it. It was ECHO.
Okay.
Echo, I can ask our person at ECFE. Echo was the organization that did marketing as a whole. So they would create something that just said like ECFE,
Mhm.
and all of any district could use the Echo marketing materials.
Oh,
And I don't know who it was that ran Echo, but that was, and I don't know if Echo was absorbed into Menafee or if it was being overseen by MDE, but
Mhm.
Echo was creating marketing materials. And it wasn't, I think we had Echo up until maybe even 4 or 5 years ago. I don't think it was that long ago that they were
Okay.
done. I'm going to say 5 years, but I'd have to ask. And I know that Carol Willie in Robbinsdale's office was using Echo materials, and she would be able to speak to that.
Mhm.
I can ask.
I just remember, gosh, was this 5 years ago now? For the 40th anniversary of ECFE, that there was a group that was sort of looking at doing this kind of statewide marketing around ECFE's birthday, and they had a logo with like
Yeah, it was ecfe.info, wasn't it? Isn't that what it was? Like if you went to ecfe.info, it would connect you to your closest ECFE. I remember that too, Susan.
Yeah, and there's a video that I share in my classes with Lois, who worked with Betty at MDE. But then, yeah, so I would think from a centralized sense, Nikki, would be to find out from Menafee, Menafee seems to be about the most centralized ECFE group ish without, and then in terms of what, and I just remember being part of those conversations around the 40th birthday and going to some meetings to generate materials and that kind of thing, and it seemed okay, but there wasn't a tremendous momentum around it. I know Monica, as a response a couple years later, did the marketing and had PR and the media and the interviews and all of that within Robbinsdale. And honestly, I thought what Monica did was bigger and kind of more flashy in terms of getting attention to ECFE than what I had seen statewide. So
I also think about organizations that have huge money behind them invested, but like organizations like Think Small, and they continue to put out parent aware information. I receive an email from Think Small every week just because I'm subscribed and I'm curious to know what's going on. But we don't have anything that gathers us. We don't have an email that comes out once a week that is a statewide to all of us as educators, drawing us together. And that really would take the power. That's a job. That's somebody's job.
yeah.
And so I don't think we're talking about a small marketing campaign. I think we're talking about literally another position at the MDE, and how do we make that happen?
So it's, so is it less around the activity of marketing and more about having stronger, advocating for more centralized presence in the Department of Education?
I don't know if I can separate those.
Well, somebody at MDE is going to do more than marketing, right? They're going to, it's more, I wasn't here when Betty and Lois were at MDE, but I hear stories. I hear stories about the old days with Betty and Lois, and, there were 2 full-time people at MDE, like exclusive to ECFE. And so there was a lot of coordination, a lot of support, a lot of training, a lot of sort of facilitating that communication from district to district, that kind of thing. And so I'm just thinking, if there's a more of a centralized role at MDE, that they will likely do more coordination and more, policy stuff, or because it just, when I talk to Mike, it just seems like he's just always inundated with forms, and ensuring that policies are being met and distributing when scholarships are done correctly and things like that. So I would guess that or are you advocating to have somebody earmarked at MDE to do marketing for ECFE? So more that. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I totally get what you're saying now, Nikki, and I think that really makes sense to have a unified message coming out from all of us. And then here's how you find your individual program. I see what you're saying now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I get for coming on late.
No, we're just starting this conversation, Ellen. So I don't think you've missed anything. Others? Jenny will interrupt your drinking. What are your thoughts?
I'm just snacking.
So you're in, which school district are you in again?
East Central, north of Hinckley.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. So, and Monica, I see you're there too. So, what are your guys' thoughts? I mean, in terms of from what you see within your local districts, and then having a more centralized presence, say at MDE, to support marketing. And Nikki, again, I just want to come back to that. I mean, I think about sort of an ad campaign, but I'm just getting that what you're looking for is more than that, more than just go to ECFE.
I can imagine an ad campaign. I can. We all see, we've heard things on NPR, right, about, go on to Parent Aware, are you looking for childcare? We hear these things on NPR. And so obviously there's funding behind it, because how did they create that? So yes, ad campaigns, billboards, things like this.
Mm-hmm.
But my thought is that develops out of the work that it's such a big job out of a full-time employee at the MDE or more. And so that's why I said earlier, like, I'm not sure I can separate those, or I said, how do we separate those? Because I think that when you were describing the idea, or like the vision of a full-time employee at the MDE and what would they do, is it more about creating a centralized program and being able to communicate with us once a week or sending these things out? Yes, I think it's that. Okay. But I also think it's connected to an ad campaign or marketing across the state. It's not just unifying us, but it's about getting this message out broadly across our state. We have a unique program, and my biggest question about our program is, why are we 45 years old and even our country, Minnesota doesn't even know who we are. Our country has no idea who we are. Mm-hmm. And I think we all go to school.
Oh, we lost you, Nikki.
Sorry, I mean, we're educators, we're facilitators. None of us, I don't think, I'll back up. Some people may have a marketing background. I do not. So I was going to say none of us are marketers. Some people may be, but I don't think we went into this thinking that I was going to be a marketer, I was going to be a lobbyist, I was going to be all of these roles. I thought I was a facilitator on the grounds in my districts, working with families. But I think we all realize it comes with so much more. Mm-hmm. We are marketing, we are outreach, our relationships are bringing people in. It is word of mouth, but I just think there's this other piece that we are lacking, and that is a huge thing that I wish we could do now that we have created, at least I've never seen in all the years that I've been in ECFE, I have never been a part of something like this where educators are coming together. And I understand we're going to be going into the summer months and people may not come to this meeting, but something tells me that come September, when everybody, hopefully everybody, I'm crossing my fingers, right, that people are back to work, that we're not going to lose educators everywhere, but people are going to show up again because we need each other. We have always needed each other. But right now, I think we have something that we could take and run with, because I think a lot of people are really appreciating what has come of it.
Interesting. Thank you. Thanks. So I was asking Monica and Jenny and Ellen, not to leave you out. So what are you guys thinking as you listen to Nikki?
Our district is tiny. We have virtually no ECFE. There's one night class where there's 3 families. We haven't had a parent ed group in years. So any kind of marketing, we just did our community needs assessment, and all the families said didn't know it existed, didn't know the purpose, all those answers over and over again. And so any kind of marketing that I can get help with of this is who we are, this is what we're for. We're not for educating you how to take care of your kids the right way. It's a group of parents to support each other that we all need, regardless of jobs and income and family size and all of that stuff. So yes, I'm very much in agreement that we need to push it forward.
Jenny, can I ask, do you know what is the incoming size of each class as they enter kindergarten in your district? How many kids are incoming each year?
About 50 to 60 for each grade level.
Of course, Nikki, you know what you're asking is huge.
Doesn't hurt.
I sit here and because there's the on one side of it, there's unifying educators, right? And I see, I can experience the emotion that I pick up from these meetings, from you all, from that ability to gather, right? And it's not an unusual response because I've heard it from educators in the past. Even educators, I had coffee with an educator in St. Paul, like 2 years ago, and she's saying, this is so wonderful that we just have a chance to talk, right? And so I understand that value. And I think that to pull it apart, like that's I think that there's some shape to that simply by continuing to offer the structure of meeting, right? To say on every, Wednesdays at noon or Fridays at 1 or Fridays at noon or whatever, this group over the summer, or not this group, because that sounds exclusive, but there will be an opportunity for ECFE professionals around the state to continue to gather and talk, right? So whatever that means for a sense of unity and a sense of coordination or opportunity to connect and dialogue. And I remain very cautious to not assert any agenda on that. I'm not a supervisor, I'm not a director, I'm not your educator, it's more, I just want to help to facilitate because I understand that need. I think that then the outgrowth, because I even in, I have this, I'm like drawing this, like funnel of unifying the educators for a common message and then sending that message out, right? Whatever that common message is. Because identifying that common message and then sharing that out, that's the huger part to me. you know, because is to identify what is that message, and then all of those mechanics about that campaign and where's that money coming from and that kind of thing. So I'm wondering, is that like a 5-year plan that starts with the gathering of people and gathering the momentum so that it becomes a thing, so that educators like Jenny always has it in her mind that she's got people she can talk to, that it isn't a novel thing, right? And then as there's some momentum and a pattern and the group becomes familiar, you know, meeting together, that there's an activity that gets formed around marketing or advertising or something. Because then I also think about bumping into existing structures like Menafee and MDE, and then the individual school districts and all of that. And maybe I'm just thinking of headaches of everybody with sort of posturing with, no, that can't be done because my school district won't buy into this, or, you know, my community address, whatever. And that is completely what I personally want to avoid, because that's not of interest to me. Anyway, I'm just thinking this out loud of, and, you know, Monica just noted that she finds, you know, she finds benefit around this, and even to have like videos and that sort of thing. So I don't know.
I feel like Mike Brown's gathering of parent and family educators maybe a couple times a year when he would host recently the communities of practice. I think it was a good start because it was gathering people for maybe a 3-hour block of time. It was exclusive, I think, because if you're going to gather on a particular day for 3-hour blocks of time, I don't know how somebody from far away, how does someone from Rochester say, I'm just going to drive to the Twin Cities for that amount of time when the drive there and back is going to equal that time?
Right.
But I think that some of these conversations have emerged there as well. My biggest question is, how do we capitalize on the fact that these conversations are happening and they've happened multiple times and they're documented? Like we know that we're on the same page in some regards. We just need to find some ways to move forward.
And that's honestly my interest, you know, is to hear back, because I can, you know, not me. I mean, we can continue to meet, right? And maybe my own personal sense of goals is a little smaller, is to identify what is appealing about, I mean, is there a structure of the meetings, the time, the frequency, stuff like that, that brings a sense of comfort that we can make that a thing, that we can make that, you know, my own observation, say, of ECFE is that one of the things that reduces a parent's sense of stress is consistency. They know that every Wednesday morning at, you know, 9:30, they have their class. It's not at Thursday afternoon, it's not Saturday afternoon, you know, like when it is. And so from my perspective, as someone helping to facilitate, you know, the meetings, is it's exciting to me that after this number of weeks, people are still showing up, that there is some value to this. And I wonder if like my little baby objectives are identifying that structure that brings comfort and brings a sense of consistency, that, you know, people will know this is where I can go to meet, you know, as kind of a first step. But what I'm hearing you say is that as people, because so far our conversations really have been about, you know, the adaptation to the online thing and how that's been for people and what resources are, and then looking ahead to fall planning, you know, and things like that. So so I think the part of that comfort is then maybe shaping some kind of an agenda or sort of that forward movement, as you were saying, with what can this group do now that we've mobilized the energy of the group and we have given the group, again, I hate even using that because it seems exclusive, but we've given an infrastructure to coming together. Then maybe where it goes are some of these big ideas that have been hard to launch in such a decentralized fashion, like a unified marketing, message, or like, recommendations if ECFE stays online in the fall or something.
Obviously, I love the idea of capitalizing on these big ideas, and I've said it so many times just within this meeting, but I actually wonder too if that will be a deterrent to some parent and family educators across the state, because if they're logging on just so that they can bounce ideas, they may be seeing this, we may not be meeting their needs then if they think that they're going to come on and they're being tasked with or asked to do something, or not kind of wondering, because I think everyone has been in this situation in our field that we're working more hours than we are perhaps getting paid for. As Ellen had said, if I do something, it's on my own time. And I think a lot of people have been in that situation and probably are in that situation. So I kind of play with that too, not to say that I don't want to capitalize on this momentum, but I wonder if we were to ask the group, and I also wonder if the listservs that this is going out to, I wonder if we got Mike Brown on here to join us for a particular meeting, and if he had the capacity, I don't know, I mean, we all receive his emails, I think, I'm not sure. But when he has the community of practice meeting, I think we're getting those emails, or I'm not even sure how he distributes those to the various districts. But I guess my question too is, do we even have a listserv that exists? That is all of the ECFE parent and family educators across the state, or I know that we know who our districts are and probably who our coordinators are. And so do they disseminate that? But I think there's some ties perhaps that we could make to link us even further together. And I think some questions that could be asked to make sure that we are meeting the needs of various participants, because like I said, I think like the Facebook, the Friends of Family Education Facebook group, that is a place where parent and family educators can kind of get ideas and bounce ideas off of each other. And this could be just an extension of that. It could be just a place that's actually live and you can expound upon those ideas. And we want to honor that. But for some, it may also be about more kind of how I'm viewing things, that yes, it is an idea to bounce ideas. And I have been super appreciative of being included in these conversations. But I definitely see that we could have some additional purpose here. Like ongoing, I mean.
Yeah. So Jenny, in your role, what do you want this? I mean, you've been a participant of our Zoom meetings, our Perfect Connection, for the last few weeks. As this continues, what is most valuable for you?
I think the bouncing of ideas, and what are you working on this week, especially after we get our guidance at the end of July of what we can do, those things. I'm newbie to everything, so everything is just sponging in. There's so much knowledge in this group on everything of what curriculums everybody's using, which ones do they like, how do you pace out your plans for the year, do you have an agenda when you have it, everything, every aspect of it is beneficial to me. That I'm game for everything. And the once a week is perfect because you just remember you have this meeting at the same time every week. It's been nice having the 2 different ones just because sometimes Friday's busy, sometimes Wednesday's busy. But, you know, come summer we can, I'm assuming, make one time work. And yeah, I hope to continue.
Thanks.
Yep.
Monica? I know you're not necessarily in a space that allows you to do, I know you said something when you came on that you are with, are you around, what do you say?
She said something like we can identify
Oh,
different
it's hard to
goals.
talk now. Okay, yeah. Can you text? Or chat? No, okay, something must be going on. And Ellen hasn't come back yet. So
Monica did send in a quick note, which I can read off. It says, we can identify different goal and possible action steps. People can break into smaller groups to work on the goals that better meet their interest.
oh, I see that. Okay, that was at 12:40. Yeah.
That
Okay.
was Monica. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. There's a new one. Oh, okay. That by meeting in the summer, we continue to figure out what this may lead to. Yeah. So, I mean, that could be an agenda. That could actually be kind of an agenda item. I mean, if we want to place the idea of agenda, it's like, what would be the purpose of the group? Well, one of the things is continue meet over the summer, share ideas, look ahead to the fall. As Jenny said, you know, there will be a bit more direction from school districts about what the fall will look like. But as part of it could be, what does this group want to do or look like, or what purpose does it continue to serve by the end of the summer? That sounds good. What do you think, Nick?
Well, I have big visions.
I know.
Every single city, I mean, ECFE, right? We serve our districts, we create relationships, we keep people in our public school districts. We're helping communities to stay healthy. What if every single city, what if every mayor said, I will contribute? I mean, I'm just thinking outside of the box, but, you know, to Ellen's point, even though she's not here, I just think we are so far beyond the time where ECFEs can contribute. I don't think that that's our reality. And I think that's the exact same thing that I would hear from my own school district is where would that come from? And we have, I think, a relatively big district. And so I just think we're looking beyond ourselves. And, you know, our district, maybe, I think most districts are probably stretched really thin, especially with what has happened with COVID-19 in our community. But I don't think that we have to lose sight of it.
So what is Menafe's? So honestly, since I've been in the state, you know, I have a wonderful relationship with Menafe, but at the same time, I've never been a member, and I've collaborated with them and worked with them and spoken at the conferences and things like that. But when I have responded like, well, isn't that a thing Menafe should do? You know, the pushback has been, well, they're an all volunteer group, right? And so, because I am very cautious, like, is, you know, what will, I just don't want to envision sort of having this conversation through the summer and then whatever we come up with, someone goes, but isn't that the mission statement for Menafe? So, I don't know. Are you guys involved with Menafe to have a feel for similarities or differences?
So the only thing that I can speak to is I have a colleague and a friend who is on the board, and my old coordinator, who is also a friend, is on the board. And Menafe has done a fantastic job of gathering us via professional development. Mm-hmm. They do their conference, and it's been, I think, very, very, very well appreciated in our community. with great attendance, and it offers the opportunity for us to connect. We also, as I have been part of a few conversations, I have come to understand that even like, yes, we do have, Menafee is connected to a lobbyist. And so there is a little bit of that advocacy that perhaps could come through Menafee, but I don't know that I don't know if Menafee funds any of that or not, but that lobbyist I know is also lobbying for community ed. And some other interests. And so sometimes we directly conflict. Some districts across the state, ECFE is part of community ed. Some of it is not community ed. And so when you look at the different models, I guess and I think about what ECFE or what Menafee is tasked with, that is overarching what I hear as well too, Susan, is that they're a group of volunteers that, you know, they're working full time in their respective school districts, and what they do is on the side, on their own time as a volunteer. And it brings me back all the time to, we need a full-time, if not more, paid position. We need to do what we can to create it. And if I thought about where would I place it, it would be back at the MDE.
Thanks, Nick. That's really helpful. Yeah, because I think the movement of any action, you know, is respective of existing structures and, you know, and that kind of thing. And much better to be, I think, especially if there is what I would hope for is some sort of a coordinated connection between these existing structures. And honestly, that would include the University of Minnesota, because that's been part of my advocacy, is that I don't always see a clear, that the Minnesota's been a clear member of the table for conversations on stuff. And again, not a complaint, just sort of an observation that all of these things can be more connected, you know. So that I would see, I feel the sense of momentum and power from the educators coming together to share ideas and to get support from each other in ways that are different than the spring conference in St. Cloud, and possibly different than some of the other professional development things. And yet I would hope that whatever MDE has resources to do and needs to do to keep ECFE running, right? And whatever the individual school districts are doing, and then whatever Menafee is doing to support the professional development and all of that, that whatever this is, like fits, like that it's just part of a larger puzzle of coordinated effort, you know. Not recreating the wheel, as they would say, or, you know, becoming the Tea Party of the Republicans. God forbid. But you know what I mean? Like some way that it just fits into the larger puzzle, and the dialogue is open and inclusive, and we're working together, and yeah.
So Nikki just wrote, Susan, that a meeting that gathers MDE staff, UFMM staff, Menafee board, and PEs across the state could be brewing, or is brewing.
Yeah, but I'm not doing it. I'm not.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds good, but honestly, then who's going to organize that meeting?
Yeah.
You know, unless an outgrowth of, you know, this group plus Menafee plus, like, you get all these people together to make that happen. I mean, for the 13 years I've been in Minnesota, I've heard about, there's been plans to do like a summer institute, you know, and with this idea that it would not only be professional development, but it would also be a gathering time and getting parenting educators together. You bring in people from around the, you know, But anyway, that always just takes energy and a time and a place and money and interest and all of that. So, but yeah, it'd be good. Yep, we'll get right on that one. So moving forward, I do want to make sure that, especially with also with Monica and with Jenny, do either one of you have a question or a need for this group that they can help you with, something more immediate with any of your school year or your online stuff or anything?
Not really. We're kind of just wrapping up, and today was the last day at school for me, and kind of figure out what to do with summer and how to shut the office door and not sit there and try and plan for the ABCD EFG options of
Oh,
what
yeah.
fall might bring.
Not
So,
HID.
Jenny, you mentioned something about July. So there's some sort of like there'll be a plan or an announcement or something for your school district about the fall that you're waiting on?
I was in a meeting last week and somebody mentioned that July 31st, MDE would release guidance on what summer or what fall is supposed to look like.
Oh,
So I don't know where they got that information. Our high school principal said today she heard it was July 15th. So something is bound to come where they're going to tell us how much control the districts have over what their school year looks like or whatnot. But
and that will include ECFE and community ed,
I don't know.
you know?
My position is I'm a preschool teacher, coordinator, and parent educator. And so my core role is the preschool teacher, which is in our district, we're right there with kindergarten. It's more of the early ed to 12 at our school. So we're not really under community ed, I don't think.
Okay. And Monica, I know that you're chatting as well as you can. Have you heard anything for the summer? Are you waiting on what is St. Paul doing in terms of future plans for the fall? Oh, here it is. Share resources, ideas, fall planning. Do that in the summer. Budget approved for St. Paul, but we don't know what it will look like. Oh, okay. So St. Paul ECFE will look like something, but you don't know quite what yet. Yeah. One of my questions for this, this summer, okay. One of my questions for this group comes back to the idea about online adaptation, right? And the the big thing that one of the things that has been very mobilizing to me about this group has been the ideas you've shared about how do you take your traditional and adapt it either virtually, understand the needs of your families, meet their needs, do the drive-bys, do the packet drop-offs, things like that. And there's so much energy around sharing of those ideas because there is no mold, right? The mold is broken. And so you all have come together as incredible adaptive experts, as Linda Darling Hammond would call you. And so with looking ahead to the fall, I would guess very likely technology is going to continue to be a major feature of what you do. And if not, the continued mechanism for doing what you do. And so I would hope, my personal interest too with this group is not just parenting ed and ECFE, and maybe that is somewhat of a defining thing that this group can do, but is also mobilizing around the idea of technological adaptation of ECFE. That I'm very happy to contribute leadership too. That's my wheelhouse, and that's something that I think is incredibly valuable, but at the same time, I know that there isn't a playbook, and especially in non-formal ed, in parent ed, there's no playbook. There's barely information on early childhood, right? Because there's been this tension around too much screen time's not good for kids, but look at all these wonderful things that they can do when they engage with screens, right?
Mhm.
So I'll just, pull back to my own personal interests and kind of what motivated this group and what I've seen from this group in terms of the innovations and the ideas and the resourcefulness that has been shared around technology. And so if that continues to play a role for this group, is coming together with some of those ideas of this is how we continue to deliver our program, and this is how I'm using technology effectively to do that. I think that, for me personally, I think that that would be great. Yeah, so.
Last week, I submitted something to our principal about my ideas for the options for ECFE next year, and continuing our Monday night class with the 5 families that come. But we have a Wednesday afternoon class where that was the parent ed time, and we have not really had anybody show up in years. And so with everybody switching to so much Zoom meetings, I was like, let's try, as somebody had mentioned, the Tuesday night after bedtime, and somehow market it as this is a time for you to just talk with other parents, talk about the struggles of, whatever the fall brings of trying to teach your kids different things, try and incorporate anything, just a place to group and to build that group and community to somehow come together.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow.
Mm-hmm.
But that's an idea that I took from it that I'm going to go with, and I'll sit there by myself at Tuesday nights on my computer and wait for somebody to show up.
If you build it, they will come.
Yeah, maybe.
But that's actually, Jenny, that's really interesting, because one of my observations, using Parentopia or not, is that we can't expect change overnight. We can't expect that just because we host a Tuesday night session for parents immediately. Now, there have been things like Melissa, and Albert Lee mentioned about doing this Facebook Live and all these people, right? Well, yeah, so I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but in terms of offering something, and maybe Nikki, this too gets to the idea of this group and momentum, right? Is that there is it's one thing of lighting a fire. It's something to keep fanning the fire, offering the heat, all of the, keeping it, and all of that eventually will catch on. And that's where I think faith and patience and believing that it's a good idea and being open and listening. I mean, that's honestly, when I think about this entire hour, I mean, it really is listening to what the group wants. And you may find from 2 or 3 parents who show up on that Tuesday night that maybe Thursday's a better night for them, or whatever, right? But I would encourage you to have heart that, like you said, you may be the only one there for a while, but you continue to offer it. And then eventually someone will go, there is that Tuesday night thing. I could do that, and then they'll bring another parent and another parent and another parent. And yeah, so we can't, I would encourage, and I'll probably find some soapbox way to share this with educators, is if the results from this spring have not been exactly as you might have hoped for, I would actually expect that there would be drop off given all sets of conditions. But the fact that you did anything and the fact that anybody did show up is incredibly valuable. And so good. I'm glad that you picked up a great idea that you can try. So.
I'm excited for it.
Good.
Something.
So here we are at 1, and so there will be a group on Friday. And then, so if we were to move to once a week over the summer, would Fridays work for all of you?
I could usually make that work.
Okay. Nikki?
if that's when consensus is.
Okay, good. I may opt for that primarily because I'm going to start a volunteer thing, and they gave me Wednesday at the Wildlife Rehabilitation Center in Roseville, and they gave me Wednesday mornings. So that may be what we move to. But for now, we'll do Friday, this coming Friday, and then I'll update the Friends of Family Education. And then in terms of, we don't have like a listserv for this group, although I just have this gathering of email addresses. But I don't know, should I contact Mike about a wider group? Yeah? Nikki, you're shaking your head yes? Okay. And maybe a step would be simply to ask Mike to advertise that we're also meeting, that like this group is meeting for other people who would like to join. Okay, good. Okay, great. All right, everyone. Well, any final words for the group?
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for showing up today.
Mhm.
Thank you. Have a
Take
great
care,
day.
everyone.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks to
Bye.
everybody. Okay, bye.